This video breaks down every phase of a modern airstrike, from satellite deception and B-2 launches to mid-air refueling and stealth sweeps that cripple Iran's air defenses. This is real military power, perfect coordination, zero assumptions, no losses, just precision and results. At 5:40 p.m. on June 21st, 2025, a 30,000-pound hunk of steel tore through the Iranian night sky at deadly speed, carrying with it a chilling message of absolute power. In 43 seconds, it wasn't just bombs falling. It was the culmination of 20 years of preparation, strategy, and cutting-edge technology. When the GBU-57 penetrated the rock and concrete protecting Fordo, the world witnessed what happens when a nation devotes all its intelligence and budget to war. It's no coincidence that Americans lack medical care. They invest in the ability to make their enemies disappear without a trace. In the above-mentioned lightning attack, the disparity in weapons between the US and Iran was brutally exposed. The US deployed billion-dollar B-2 stealth bombers, carrying 30,000-pound GBU-57 bombs, GPS-guided with an accuracy of 5 feet. At the same time, the Tomahawk Block V cruise missile flies low, avoids radar, and can update targets via satellite. Meanwhile, Iran's air defense systems, such as the S-300 or Tor M1, despite their modernity, were still completely neutralized by US electronic warfare. This fight is not one of equal strength. It is one of different class. 18 hours before the fateful moment, the atmosphere at Whitman Air Force Base was tense. The ground crews work frantically around one of the most secretive and expensive war machines on the planet, the B-2 Spirit, one of just 19 in service in the world. Each one costs $2.1 billion. Yes, billion with a B, making it more valuable than gold by weight. The crew chief ran through the pre-flight checklist, as the GBU-57 MOPs, 14 of each, were carefully loaded into the rotary launcher. Beneath the fuselage were 180,000 pounds of JP-8 fuel, ready to send 336,500 pounds of metal and destruction hurtling into the darkness. At 1:01 on June 21st, the first B-2 began taxiing down the 12,400-foot runway. The 4 General Electric F-118 engines hummed smoothly. Not too loud, but more than enough to lift this invisible iron fist into the sky. The pilot keeps a shallow takeoff angle, minimizing the infrared footprint, making it difficult for even friendly satellites to detect. But the trickiest part is yet to come. Only 7 B-2s actually flew toward Iran, while the rest pretended to head toward the Pacific. A clever trick, Russian and Chinese satellites report the wrong direction, creating diplomatic chaos and misleading intelligence. Meanwhile, the actual attack package had quietly disappeared into the Atlantic night. The transatlantic flight was not simple. Although the B-2 can fly up to 6,000 nautical miles on internal fuel, when carrying additional fuel tanks to increase its range, the drag increases, reducing its range to about 4,500 nautical miles. The trip from Missouri to Iran and back is 14,200 nautical miles, an impossible feat without the support of an aerial refueling team. And that's where the real danger begins. The first refueling took place around 4 a.m. in the mid-Atlantic, where the skies were dark, the winds were strong, and any mistake was costly. In such harsh conditions, connecting fuel probes between 2 planes flying at 400 knots was like threading a needle while riding a mechanical bull in a dark room. The KC-135 tanker opens its refueling probe like a flying needle, while the B-2 pilot must maintain a position exactly 30 feet behind and 15 feet below, not even an inch off. Even a slight deviation could cause the system to fail, forcing the million-dollar bomber to turn back home. Even though the stratosphere outside was freezing cold, sweat still poured down the forehead of the fueling station operator, because every second was a life or death test. The B-2s were refueling at a rate of 1,000 pounds per minute, every drop a lifeline for the long journey ahead. By 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, after 2 more refuelings and more than 15 hours of continuous flight, the strike package was approaching Iraqi airspace. And that's when the big game officially began. From the seemingly empty sky, 4 F-22 Raptors suddenly appeared like ghosts. And that's when the big game officially began. From the seemingly empty sky, 4 F-22 Raptors suddenly appeared like ghosts. The pilot in command needed only a few short signals. Disco 47, sweet picture, clean, no factor. Which simply translated, the sky ahead is completely clear, no threat. These 4 F-22s don't carry bombs. They carry air dominance. Each is armed with 6 AMRAAMs and 2 Sidewinders, ready to destroy any Iranian aircraft reckless enough to take off. From here, every next step of the campaign was accompanied by stealth warriors, like silent guardians of an approaching punishment. Each F-22 was ready to fire, destroying any Iranian fighter that dared to leave the runway. Behind them, 8 F-35s advanced like futuristic ghosts, data-linked, scanning the skies, and ready to turn any resistance to ash. Iran's Air Force may be considered okay in the region, but when faced with 2 squadrons of 5th-generation fighters, the F-22 and F-35, they'd better stay home. At 1839 local time, the lead B-2 entered its critical phase. The pilot activated the GPS-assisted targeting system, which linked to multiple satellites simultaneously to achieve accuracy within 5 feet, meaning dropping a bomb from 45,000 feet and still hitting the target window. The rotating launcher in the forward weapons bay began to rotate, positioning the first MOP, a 30,000-pound weapon, about to punch through 300 feet of granite that had existed since before the wheel. Within 60 seconds, the terrain would change forever. But Fordo wasn't the only target tonight. 2 hours ago, at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 1,200 miles away, deep in the ocean, another man was preparing his part in the symphony of destruction. In the dimly lit blue control room of a guided missile submarine, possibly the USS Georgia, the captain stared intently at the digital countdown on the combat display. Georgia was unlike any other submarine that had ever existed. A former Ohio-class nuclear-powered Trident ballistic missile submarine, now redesigned into the nightmare that was the SSGN, carrying not 24, but 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles, more bombardment power than a carrier strike group combined. And all were waiting for the order to launch. The USS Georgia submarine is unlike any other machine that has ever existed under the ocean. Originally an Ohio-class nuclear submarine carrying 24 Trident ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads, Georgia was converted into an SSGN, a guided attack submarine, at a cost of $700 million. Now, instead of carrying strategic destruction, she carries 154 Tomahawks, a land attack power greater than an entire aircraft carrier battle group, surpassing any existing Tomahawk-equipped destroyer or cruiser. Each Tomahawk Block 5 is the culmination of 40 years of cruise missile technology. It costs $2 million, carries a 1,000-pound warhead, and flies 1,500 miles with accuracy measured in inches, not yards. At 60 feet below the surface, periscope level, Georgia is more exposed than ever. The ANBBS, one photonics mast, breaks the surface of the sea like a metal pole. Its radar reflections can be picked up by any sophisticated surveillance system. But the Iranians are looking in the wrong direction. They are focusing all their radars on the narrow Persian Gulf, ignoring the deep waters where Georgia lurks like a predator. Launching missiles from underwater is not like a video game. Each Tomahawk is housed in a tube filled with high-pressure gas. When the launch command was confirmed, the explosives broke the seal, and the gas pressure pushed the rocket out like a cork from a champagne bottle. The rocket shot up at 50 feet per second. Then the solid fuel booster ignited, sending it into the dark night atmosphere. But Newton's third law didn't let up. When a 3,000-pound rocket left the tube, the submarine was pushed in the opposite direction. The ballast crew had to react instantly. Too slow, and the ship would surface, exposing itself to radar within a 50-mile radius. Too fast, and it would sink too deep, beyond its safe depth. At 4:05 p.m. Eastern Time, the first Tomahawk erupted from the ocean. The boosters burned for 12 seconds, accelerating to 550 miles per hour before separating, leaving room for a Williams F-107 mini-jet engine, which sent the missile hurtling toward its target at subsonic speeds. In less than a minute, all 30 missiles were in flight, each just 100 feet above the ground, following the terrain, guided by satellite imagery compared to real-world scenes. Like an armed Google Maps, impossible to jam, spoof, or deflect. Their flight lasted 127 minutes, no coincidence, but perfectly synchronized with the main attack. They would arrive in Isfahan 30 minutes early, confusing Iran's air defenses, causing radars to point upward while the real threat crept closer to the ground. As Iran was still figuring out how to respond to the B-2, 30 Tomahawk missiles quietly slipped through the country's back door. The captain of the USS Georgia watched as each green triangle disappeared from his screen. The ship's mission was complete. But the missiles' journeys were just beginning. The Tomahawk Block 5 is not only an attack weapon, but also a reconnaissance eye and ear. Thanks to a two-way data link, they send real-time images to the command center, allowing them to attack and assess damage as they go. As the missiles departed, Georgia quietly dove deep, disappearing into the thermosphere, where all sound signals were distorted, leaving her a ghost on the ocean floor. Above, 30 missiles are making history, while ahead, B-2s prepare to deliver the final blow. At 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the skies over the Middle East were rocked by the largest air sweep since Operation Iraqi Freedom. More than 60 fighter jets cleared the way for the B-2 formation. Leading the way were 4 F-22 Raptors at 50,000 feet. The stealth fighters had absolute superiority. Next up are 8 F-35s at 35,000 feet, acting as sensors and electronic commanders. Below them, dozens of FA-18 Super Hornets fly at 25,000 feet, supported by 4 EA-18G Growlers, electronic warfare orchestrators. Meanwhile, Reserve F-18 patrol the Gulf, while KC-135s, KC-46 tankers, and RC-135 rivet joints silently collect signals, turning every Iranian emission into a living tactical map. This is not just a show of force, but a matter of tactical calculation, calculated by the second. The F-35 maintains an air-to-air configuration, carrying 4 AMRAAMs, acting as a frontline stealth sensor. Meanwhile, more than 30 FA-18 Super Hornets spread across the squadron carried more than 60 HARM anti-radar missiles, combined with 8 from Growler, enough to knock out all Iranian radars twice. Some carry HARMs, others are on escort or air-to-air missions, but they only fire when necessary. The F-35 passively searches with the AN/AS Q-239 system, then transmits data via Link 16 to the Super Hornet to attack from a distance while maintaining stealth. The F-22 is ready to handle any Iranian aircraft that dares to take off. The operation unfolded over a 60-mile front with overlapping layers of surveillance. 50 miles to the south, the Growlers began a jam symphony, each broadcasting 30 kilowatts of multiband jamming. On Iranian radars, false targets appeared in a flurry, throwing the air defense system into chaos. At exactly 17:32, an S-300 battery at Natanz turned on its radar and was immediately detected. F-35 locked on. Super Hornet launched HARM. Growler increased jamming. Seconds later, the $100 million air defense system was reduced to ashes. And that was just the beginning. At 17:32, an S-300 air defense battery near Natanz made a serious mistake by turning on its 30 N6E2 fire control radar, breaking the silent emission mode. Immediately, the F-35 picked up the signal with its passive sensor, transmitted data to the Super Hornet via Link 16. The harm was launched, while the Growler increased the jamming. The missile flies at Mach 2.5, locks on, and hits from less than 10 meters away. The $100 million radar is reduced to scrap metal. The Super Hornets work in pairs, one spotter, one destroyer. The SA-15 mobile air defense systems were detected by F-35 sensors and quickly intercepted. The combined strategy of 5th-generation stealth aircraft and 4th-generation fighters is maximized. Stealth as eyes, legacy as fists. By 1735, 31 HARM missiles had destroyed 31 targets. The rest fell silent in fear. Immediately after, the Growler switched to jamming all military frequencies, paralyzing all communications, including civilian networks. The F-22s held altitude, scanning the sky, but not a single Iranian pilot dared to take off. By 1739, the 50-mile-wide, 200-mile-deep attack corridor was completely cleared. 125 American planes moved as if they were on home turf. (1740), the first B-2 bomb bay opens. The 30,000-pound GBU-57 free falls from 45,000 feet. GPS locks onto satellites. Tail fins deploy. For a split second, the pilot felt the jolt as the massive steel block left the plane. A sensation every B-2 pilot knows well. 43 seconds later, the bomb penetrated 200 feet of concrete, detonating at a depth of 180 feet, creating a pressure of more than 100,000 psi, crushing the entire structure. But that wasn't all. 11 more MOPs rained down, creating a meteorite shower that shook the Fordo Mountains. Tonight's main program had just officially begun. At 1740 and 43 seconds, exactly 43 seconds after release, the first GBU-57 penetrator bomb slammed into Fordo at 700 miles per hour. With an energy equivalent to 1.5 billion joules, like a train hitting concrete, it penetrated 200 feet of reinforced concrete and 40 feet of solid granite. But the bomb did not explode immediately. The smart fuse waited until a depth of 180 feet before triggering, creating a shockwave that destroyed the entire underground structure. One was not enough. 12 were dropped in series, each creating overlapping shockwaves that reduced the entire mountain range to rubble. At Natanz, due to the lower depth, only 2 MOPs were released with time intervals to avoid interference with the blast wave. At the same time, 30 Tomahawks from the submarine USS Georgia flew low to the ground, adjusting their flight path using the visual system. After 2 hours of flight, at 19:05, the first missile hit the hexafluoride warehouse in Isfahan, exploded, creating an uncontrollable toxic cloud. The remaining 29 missiles hit their targets accurately within 45 seconds. The Tour M1 air defense system was heavily jammed and could not react in time. The B-2 now withdrew safely with just enough fuel. Behind them, 3 nuclear facilities were engulfed in flames. Total combat time, 25 minutes. Not a single anti-aircraft missile was fired. Not a single Iranian fighter jet took off. Absolute surprise. Perfect mission. In less than half an hour, Iran's nuclear program was wiped out. Something that 7 previous presidents had failed to do, now completed with a thunderous strike. Goodbye.
Bienvenido.